Please welcome President and Chief Executive Officer, Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board, Ernest Wooden Jr., Vice President of Tourism, ProColombia, Julian Guerrero, and Jordanian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Lina Annab, for a discussion with Skift Europe editor Patrick White and tourism reporter Dan Peltier.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our Tourism Superpanel, which is all about talking about marketing travel in an age of uncertainty. And unfortunately, this has been one of the most turmoil-filled years for the tourism sector, whether it's been the continued rise of nationalism and populism really all over the world, but especially in the US and Europe. Whether it's been terrorist attacks, over-tourism, which is our favorite buzzword at Skift, and now everywhere else it seems like, to extreme weather. Many travelers and destination marketers have been in a state of perm anxiety this year, which is our theme for this year's Skift Global Forum. So for this panel, we're going to be talking about some of those broad anxieties, how our speakers and their teams are adapting their marketing strategies because of those, and then also more of the fun stuff, what the future of tourism marketing looks like.
So the destinations featured on today's Superpanel are very different, but were picked for very specific reasons. Colombia is a great example of a country that has completely turned around its tourism industry in recent years. Jordan is managing to grow visitor numbers despite being in a geographically sensitive region. And Los Angeles is a forward-thinking city with a determination to make sure everyone is welcome to visit. What they all have in common is that they are successfully navigating the uncertain times we find ourselves in. To get the most from a fantastic lineup, there are two of us from Skift. I'll be bringing the European perspective, and Dan has the North American expertise. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dan for the first question.
Thanks, Patrick. So Julian, let's start with you. We just heard Renee speak about crisis communications and dispelling myths and how to get out there in case a disaster strikes. Colombia is getting ready to mark its one-year anniversary of the very important peace deal with the FARC that ended many decades of violence and unrest, but as you know, and as many people here know, there's so much happening in Colombia. It's such an exciting country. Just 2 years ago, the entire Skift team went there for a week to Medellin and saw the transformation and all the amazing things going on. It's one of the world's fastest growing economies, so clearly a great place to be. In the years since and even before the peace deal, how have you moved forward with your tourism marketing efforts? And what's the role of destination marketers in changing a destination's reputation?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. As you rightly pointed out, Colombia has had an unprecedented growth in the number of international arrivals. Just to give you a figure, if you compare the first 6 months of this year to the previous year, we have been growing at above 22%, which is almost 5 times the international average, according to the World Tourism Organization. And as you had, we don't hide away from the fact that Colombia used to be a dangerous destination and that we've had a transition that has been going on not only as a result of the signing of the peace process at the end of last year, but a few years in advance, I would say 6 to 8 years. And it has been very challenging because, you know, once you have a bad reputation, as a previous speaker pointed out, it's very tough to change that. So we've done several campaigns. We had one that was quite successful, the first one that we had in recent times, that was called "The Only Risk is Wanting to Stay." You know, everybody associated Colombia with a risky destination, and we said, hey, let's go heads on with that perception. We don't want to shy away from it. We want to go heads on against it, let's say. And it was a quite successful campaign that later evolved into something else, and now we're actually thinking about something else. But I think it's the joint work of the government, of the promotion agency, but we cannot do it alone. We have to do it hand with the private sector. So we work very closely with the private sector to make sure that we are actually providing them a good service and that we are really portraying the image of the country. And once again, I want to insist that when we promote Colombia, and I could give you examples, but it would take too long probably, about what would we do, we don't hide away from the fact that Colombia used to be associated with violence, with drugs, with narcos, now that the Netflix has put that already again on the spot. But I think that what is interesting to do is to really look at those issues from a perspective of history and transition and interpret them and send a message like that's part of our history, just as Nazism was part of the history of Germany, and you can actually go visit concentration camps in Europe, but still they say, wait, we're not that anymore. So that's the message that we want to convey, being very frank, very authentic, and saying that there's much more to Colombia than just that.
Excellent. And Lina, what's your perspective on this in terms of how, as a tourism board, to be upfront when a disaster strikes or some kind of PR crisis? What kind of plan do you have in place, and how have you been thinking about this?
Well, we have, in Jordan, we have been forced to be always on the defensive, and we just realized that, that takes away a lot from the communication that we want to share with the world. So one thing we decided to do is to really reflect what Jordan has to offer and what Jordan is all about, rather than be on the receiving end and always having to rebut media coverage that has nothing to, or that does not relate to what the offering of Jordan is. So I would say we took a much more proactive approach in identifying what the factors are, what the demand factors are out there, in leveraging opportunities that we knew we had, and we have it simply because of all the digital ecosystem that we found ourselves in, and what that represented in terms of how we can mine demand, and we can mine this data to find, as we say, the needle in the haystack. We have narrowed down our target, where demand is, what type of demand, and we have also identified our points of competitiveness, and we've just focused on that. It is useless, we find, it is useless to keep on having to talk about issues that are non-existent, for example, about how safe and secure a place is or Jordan is, because I think today we live in a new normal. And if you look at the UK, in the past 6 months, they've had 5 terrorist incidents. If you look at the US in 2016, it had the most gun-violent incident. So it's a new world that we live in. And I think as far as Jordan, when it comes to Jordan, we have a lot to highlight. And we have a great opportunity to be proactive in a world that is open and is ready to hear stories similar to the ones coming from Jordan.
Excellent. Now, Ernie, I want to come to you next. Earlier this year, LA launched its Everyone is Welcome campaign to combat some of the xenophobic rhetoric coming out of Washington. Why do you think it's important for tourism boards to take a stand on issues like this?
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for having me here today. I think that Los Angeles was in a unique position, not unlike my colleagues that are grappling with difficult, sometimes political and other issues that they've got to overcome when inviting people to their destinations. Los Angeles was suffering from the same kind of concerns. Earlier this year, a lot of rhetoric out of Washington. We sat around and said there's a sort of storyline that's going around the world that people are not welcome to the United States, and perhaps not even to Los Angeles. And so we started to put together concrete plans as to how to combat that sense of a lack of welcome, and we literally called it Everyone is Welcome. So what we did was very specific. We launched a Everyone's Welcome campaign, invested several $1 million in it, targeted at consumers and travelers from around the world that basically celebrated our diversity in Los Angeles. We're privileged to say that we're one of only 2 cities in the country that does not have a predominant ethnicity. We hail from 240 countries, speak over 130 different languages, practice more than 110 religions. And so we made it a point of pushing out a campaign via a very smartly done video called Our Paper Airplanes. It was a sort of reflection. All of the paper airplanes had fabric coming from places around the world. It's a spot that did not have anyone speaking, and it touched the hearts of people from around the world. As of this point, I'm told by my creative team, it's been seen literally by 18 million people and spoken about in newspapers around the globe. Our international visitation is core to our success. Over 47 million people come to Los Angeles. Close to 7 million of them are international visitors. So, like my colleagues here, grappling with difficult things that sometimes are not particularly in our lane, but do impact perceptions of our destinations. And that's one of the ways that Los Angeles tackled that problem recently.
Now, over-tourism is a big theme of today and tomorrow, and it's become one of the buzzwords of the summer, really. None of your three destinations really have to worry about it at the moment, but I guess I want to know how you're preparing to cope with the next 5 million visitors. Perhaps we'll start with you, Julian, first.
Well, I have to say from the beginning that I'm not an expert on over-tourism, maybe only when I travel to one of those over-touristic destinations, but that's it. But just to say, I mean, in Colombia, we are a population, we are a country the size of France, Spain, and Portugal together, roughly. And we have a population of 50 million inhabitants. Those three countries in Europe have a population of 121 million, so more than twice the population that Colombia has. And these three countries are receiving approximately 170, 60-something, 70 million tourists from around the world. We are receiving 5. So that's certainly not a problem in Colombia, but still, we want to position the country not as any type of destination. We are very much aware that the focus and the tendency, the trend today on tourism is to have higher income tourists that are able to spend more, but at the same time, a reduced number of them so that the impact on the environment is much less. So we work very closely with the Ministry of Environment. There is a very good institutionality in Colombia with regards to national parks and protected areas. Just to give you an idea, in Colombia, it's 100% forbidden to build anything inside national parks. So we are developing other infrastructure close to the parks where you can access them, but not inside them. So I think we found a good balance, and of course we have the responsibility of not making the mistakes that other destinations have made and learn from them and not just repeat history, which would be a shame for us to do.
And Ernie, is it something LA has to worry about at all?
Yeah, it's interesting, this whole matter of over-tourism. This has kind of gotten into our language over the last 4 or 5 years. Looking way back, we never talked about over-tourism, but this is an issue that I heard an expression recently that the problem with tourism is tourism. And I think we're going to be hearing more and more of that. And so even in places like Los Angeles, by the way, where our consumer insights tell us that Angelenos generally overwhelmingly favor tourism for lots of good reasons. 500,000 people in Los Angeles make their living in some part of tourism. But we have our pockets of issues like other major destinations around the world that we're very concerned about. Believe it or not, for us, it's the Hollywood sign, which is our Eiffel Tower. And people say, well, how could that be? Well, when people come to Los Angeles, they want a selfie or a picture close to that iconic thing, the Hollywood sign. The problem with that is, as you go up toward the hills, toward that sign, people live there. And so the streets tend to be narrow, and the tourists tend to be overwhelming. And we've had occasion where it's literally hard to get an ambulance or a fire truck up those streets to take care of emergencies in those areas. So we're dealing with that, and of course we've had neighbors that are talking not very nicely about the tourists and the infrastructure there. We've got a plan of action to try to alleviate that pressure, a combination of directing tourists to different locations, better locations to be able to see it, take better selfies, providing public transportation to those locations that make it easier on street traffic, working with the police, the fire department, and others for the safety and security of our neighbors. But these are important issues that unless we're willing to sacrifice our long-term health in tourism, we've got to deal with those kinds of issues throughout the world today.
And Lina, if I come to you last, you've got some iconic landmarks in Jordan.
Yes.
Are you worried that they will become too popular?
For sure. I mean, the whole issue of over-tourism is proving to be a very good lesson for us to learn from, for things to do and not to do. I think we shouldn't be surprised that there is over-tourism if we consider the exponential growth in the number of travelers worldwide. Just recently, we were with some Chinese officials, and somebody mentioned that today there are 200 million Chinese travelers, and in 5 years' time, they expect them to become 700 million. I had to ask the question twice just to make sure that I understood correctly. So just imagine the growth in just one nationality. So these things are bound to happen. For us, to go back to your question, we have a site management plan, especially for those iconic sites. We also, by the way, interestingly enough, just recently, there was an article written about Jordan where it lauded the under-tourism, if we can say that, where it said, you know, you go to these iconic sites and you feel like you are on a private tour because the numbers were not as crowded. Of course, this is not the case anymore. We are witnessing a very healthy growth in the numbers, but we are nowhere close to the full capacity of what these sites can take. All in all, I think over-tourism, we can look at it as a big number of people going to one site, or we can also look at it from a policy point of view, which I think, you know, this is what we are concerned about here. It did not happen overnight, over-tourism in those destinations, and I think there are policy lessons to be learned, because sometimes we tend to focus on marketing only, and we forget the other sustainable and environmental issues that need to be taken into consideration when we are talking numbers, whether visitors or receipts.
If I can just add quickly, a couple weeks ago, Visit Oslo launched this quirky little campaign about rescuing travelers from overcrowded European cities. So there was a couple in Paris who was upset that they couldn't even see the Mona Lisa when they were at the Louvre. They couldn't get the right picture, and they were just very distraught. And Visit Oslo reached out to them on Instagram, I believe, and said, like, would you like to come to our city? We have everything that you want to see in Paris, but not a lot of tourists, and it's very calm, and you know, all the same offerings, and we're a very cool city. And it just makes me wonder, you know, in your regions, are there any destinations that you see like, wow, like we can really go in there and capitalize on, you know, over-tourism happening there, and try to attract those tourists to come to our destination, or even what are your thoughts on a campaign like that?
You're asking me?
Any of you.
Let me tell you, I want to point out something about our region. You mentioned over-tourism as a crisis or as a problem. And the thinking has always been, you know, one problem, one place is an opportunity in another. I tend to disagree with this strongly, because a good tourism environment in a region, I think, creates a lot of synergy that could impact positively all players and all surrounding or neighboring countries. We don't have, to answer your specific question, we don't have in our region any regions that are suffering from over-tourism. We're hoping that the numbers would grow, but it would not reach to the over limit that you're talking about.
Yeah. No, maybe just, I will just add that the experience of seeing the Mona Lisa is not only about, or for the sake, any iconic symbol or piece of art. It's not only about seeing the Mona Lisa as such. I mean, the Mona Lisa maybe could tour to Oslo or to any other destination, but it's about the experience of being there, being in the Musée du Louvre, seeing the other works of art in the museum, hearing people speak French, going outside and having a crepe with Nutella, you know? So I don't think that it's that easy to just take travelers from one destination, because at the end of the day, you want to have the full feel of what it means to be in one place, not just build the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas and go to Las Vegas instead of going to Paris, for example. That's a completely different type of experience.
Right, right.
Yeah, for sure. We don't have a Mona Lisa in Los Angeles to offer them. The question presumes, I think, that it's a zero-sum game. And my sense, like my colleagues here, is that it's not. So I'm much more comfortable working in the space that celebrates what's exciting and different and interesting about Los Angeles than it is to position myself differently against another location. The advantages of my location are unique. And I think that our marketing will stand on its own merits, and people will appreciate that and visit us for those reasons.
Excellent. Okay, Julian, I want to go back to you for a second and kind of talk more about marketing strategy. So more specifically about Colombia, how do you distinguish yourself in South America with travelers who might not know the difference between Colombia, Chile, or Peru?
Yeah. You know, that's very challenging because there are all very beautiful countries, the one that exist in Latin America. So competing for who has the best nature, and we pride ourselves in Colombia as having one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. Well, we cannot deny that Brazil is beautiful, Peru is beautiful, Venezuela is beautiful, etc. So it's very difficult to differentiate. If there's one thing that I would like to convey, or maybe two ideas, is that Colombia is characterized by being a country of regions. And of course, every country is a country of regions, but in Colombia, they are very, very different from each other. We have a portion of the country in the Caribbean, we have a portion of the country in the Pacific Ocean. Actually, we are the only South American country with oceans both in the Atlantic and Pacific. We have the Andean range of mountains, we have the Eastern Plains or the Orinoco region, and finally, we have the Amazon Basin. So it will be difficult to find, and again, I don't want to say anything bad about my neighboring countries, but if you take Venezuela, for example, Venezuela has beautiful Eastern Plains, and they have beautiful Caribbean, but they don't have the Andes, and they don't have the Pacific. If you look at other destinations, and I won't mention them, they have a couple of those regions, but none of them have the 5 regions that Colombia has. So I think it's a great gateway to Latin America. And it happens like when you go on a sales in Macy's here down the road, and you see a tag that says, pay 1, take 2. Well, in Colombia, you're paying for 1 country, and you're having 5 entirely different destinations that you can pick and choose what you prefer, and then maybe you can make an experience and expand to other countries. So I think that's one differentiator. Then, apologize if I'm taking too long, but I'll be quick. We also think that there is something very powerful in Colombia that makes us quite unique, and it's the people. I mean, I know that every country markets their people as being the most welcoming, but it's unbelievable how Colombian people are in the sense that they put purpose in what they are doing with their job. They find meaningfulness in what they do, but we do it with a twist. We do it with passion. We do it with a smile, with a hug. We are not afraid of expressing our feelings. So at the end of the day, no matter how much tourism has evolved, and some previous speakers spoke about artificial intelligence and chatbots and that sort of things, no matter how much technology has influenced tourism, I still think that tourism is a human experience above all. And you can be in the best place in the world, in the 5-star or 10-star hotel, but at the end of the day, if your human experience is not amazing, it will not be a good experience. And I think Colombia is very strong on the people.
Excellent. Speaking of people and humans, many destinations increasingly use social media influencers, which I'm sure many of you actively follow, many of them online, as key parts of their marketing strategies because of the growth of platforms like Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat. Lina, I know that Jordan has done a lot of work with influencers over the years. Has it all been worth it, and how has it played out for you?
Absolutely. Engaging influencers in this day and age is a must. It's no longer an option. I think the way we see it in Jordan, we see a huge opportunity in the digital platforms that are out there, and in the way we can leverage what they have to offer. Influencer is just but one aspect. We're fully aware of what we're calling the Instagram effect, and what that instigates gates in terms of inspiring people to go through the experiences that are being shown. The thing is, the ecosystem is changing very fast. So the strategy that used to last a year or two before, now we have to be very agile and we have to be quick in responding to all the changes that are taking place. We're having to reinvent ourselves. We're having to always gauge meaningful partnerships with different players so that we can ensure the reach that we need. Influencers, to go back again, are very important, but there are also other things that are in the digital, moving from the regular to the digital advertising or promotion that we're having to look at. And I tell you, there are the opportunities inherent in the new ecosystem that is evolving, especially for a destination like ours, where we are still working on reaching our full potential, are immense, and it's just a matter of knowing how to go after them.
Now, Ernie, I'm sure influencers are big in LA as well, but you also do a lot of traditional advertising, TV and print media. Is this still important?
Yeah, it's decreasingly important, I'll put it that way. It's a wholly new world out there. When I sit with my marketing people, these young people that really understand this, it's a fascinating change of landscape. You know, Los Angeles, because of its destination, has a huge social media following. Over 1 million Facebook friends, more than 5 million friends in China between Weibo and WeChat and that kind of thing. And these influencers are growing in stature. You know, there's one young lady we used recently. She has 5 million people that follow her when she goes on. It's a wholly different world. And so as we
cheaper, I presume, as well.
Pardon?
Is it cheaper?
I think that's her name. Yeah.
No, is it?
Yeah. But it's incredible. You think about some of the major programs on television that might have 6 or 7 million people watching it all over the country. This one young lady has 5 million. So as we strategize about which tools in the toolbox to use in our marketing of Los Angeles, increasingly these folks are important, and to a decreasing effect. In fact, this year we will probably take our TV advertising, direct spend advertising on TV to zero.
Wow.
And push all of our money through the channels that we are tracking that are having huge influence on our international travelers and our domestic travelers. We've seen the role that they've played in raising the stature and the recognition of Los Angeles around the world. It wasn't because of television that happened. All of our indirect spend, all of our earned media last year, our earned media was well over $140 million of earned media, came from these social channels. And so we're going to be betting very heavily on that in the future. Doesn't mean we won't ever go back to domestic television, but for now we think that that's the future.
Very insightful. Ernie, we've all heard a lot about this live like a local marketing push that just seems to be pervasive the past few years. What does that mean to your organization, and do you think that people really want to live like a local Angelino when they're visiting Los Angeles?
Oh, there's no doubt about it, and I've got so many data points to share with you about that. First of all, these social media folks really push that along. Living like an LA local is a sort of Oz, is a sort of thing that it's on everyone's bucket list. One day I want to come to LA. I spend a lot of time in China. We have 4 offices in China. And when I talk to young people about Los Angeles, that's the one thing that they want to do, is to come to LA. Of course, they want to see the Hollywood sign, they want to see the Walk of Fame, they want to bump into a movie star. But many of these young people, because of social media, want to live like an Angelino. What do folks really live like? College students that are at USC, UCLA, they write back home and they talk about how cool the lifestyle is. I was sharing with someone earlier this morning, our local Whole Foods in downtown Los Angeles, a 40,000 square foot supermarket, is the hottest pickup place probably in the country. Whole Foods. So I know guys, old guys actually, They don't want to go to the bars. They want to go to Whole Foods and sit in the bar at the Whole Foods because all the attractive women are eating kale, I guess. I don't know. But living like an Angelino is a very special thing. It has its own sort of nuance and attractiveness. And so we believe that's really real, and we're pushing that in every possible way we can think of.
You really learn something new every day.
And if we could take it in a different direction slightly, what form of technology...
Didn't want to take your mind in the wrong direction with that.
What forms of new technology do you see really disrupting the destination marketing space over the next 5 years? Julian, go to you. What's changing?
Well, I do think that in terms of technology, of course, I would think it's artificial intelligence. I think that would be the strongest. But as we heard also this morning, I don't think we are there yet. It won't be as quick as everybody is expecting. And I think the other disruptor, of course, is, I don't know if that's a technology, but that's a trend at least. It's collaborative economies, you know. I think that's also, and we heard also some presentations on that. So I really wouldn't have much to say about that. I'm not an expert on AI, so I'll leave it there.
And Lina, what about you? I know Jordan's used drones before, I think, in your advertising.
Yeah, well, drones is past.
Done.
It's done. We're looking more now into virtual reality and to see how we can, and augmented reality, and to see how we can best use them in highlighting some of the iconic sites that we have. But I have a question. Is there a Whole Foods store close by here?
Right downstairs, actually.
Maybe we live like a New Yorker.
I think they have several here. I'm not sure if they have the same sort of attributes. Let's put it that way.
Oh boy.
This is going downhill real quick.
No, Ernie, I was just going to say things are only going uphill for LA recently. It seems like between the success of La La Land, which if you haven't seen it, you should. Great movie. You have the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art opening in a few years, very cool. And also, congratulations on the 2028 Summer Olympics, the bid that was announced recently. And obviously that's the Olympics, 10 years away, Lucas Museum a few years. How do you keep the excitement and energy alive for things so far away like that today?
Well, you know, we have, my director of PR always uses this expression, I love it. She says, we just have an abundance of riches. And we're very proud of that. So many great things have happened to us. The Olympics was a major, major win for us. To give some sense about that, it's worth about $18 billion of economic lift to the United States, and about $11 billion of it just to Southern California. So a major, major thing. You know, we're building the new Rams Stadium, the most expensive stadium in the world. These other cultural institutions that are coming to Los Angeles. And so we have a challenge of really highlighting the ones that are the most appropriate ones to the right audiences. The sporting world loves LA because of our weather. It's a great thing to have. That's one of our points of riches. But we are looking way out as to how to do that. Your previous question about what is going to change in our world, what interrupters are out there, I do believe that artificial intelligence is going to play a role in that. I sit weekly with my key people. And last week in my one-on-one with our senior vice president of marketing, I challenged them and my question was, in what way will artificial intelligence change one or two parts of our lives? We are a direct sales agent for the city, meaning that it's our job to get people to come in and use the convention center and those sorts of things. And of course, we're the marketer of the brand of LA. So how will this new technology influence either one of those? And one of the things that we're thinking about doing and spending a lot of time on right now is in the world of direct sales, different than brand marketing, how we can bring that skill set to the more than 320 conventions that we attend around the world to help buyers have a closer relationship with the experience in LA through artificial intelligence and things like that. So we've got some ideas about pop-ups and that kind of thing that we're going to be investing heavily in, but we think that that's the future. People that have never, especially the further away they are from LA, to be able to experience it almost with breezes in their face and things like that. We think there's some potential there.
Definitely. Okay, and all of you, before you got to the tourism sector, you were all in the private sector for many years. When you first got to tourism, what was the first thing you noticed was missing? Julian, I know you were talking. First thing that you noticed was missing that you wanted to bring to your organization of the tourism sector, and I know you were talking about the private sector a few minutes ago.
Well, I think it was actually innovation. The first thing that I did when I started in the job. It was quite recently, it was the beginning of this year. I thought that we needed to really put innovation at the heart of what we do. And I would like to emphasize one thing about innovation is that normally people associate innovation with technology and the digital and the virtual reality and all that sorts of stuff. But I really think that innovation is a much, much wider word. And we have to innovate not only in terms of the technology, but in the way we do things. And just to give you an example, tourism is as much a physical experience as it is an intellectual experience or an emotional or psychological or spiritual experience. And we still need to find that connect between the physical and the intellectual, the outer and the inner part. And for example, in Colombia, we found out that one of the nicest way that we can help promote Colombia as a tourism destination is to focus on a topic that makes a great connection between that physical transportation of people to places and what you experience in your mind, and that is music. Music is so strong in Colombia. We have over 1,000 different rhythms from all types, from Amazon to the Caribbean. We have many or several international well-recognized musicians or singers like Shakira, like J Balvin, etc. So we want to use music, and we are currently focusing on music as a way to connect travelers from the world to our country. And that means innovating a lot in the type of marketing we do and using platforms that are more related to music, like whatever, Spotify, Deezer, you name it, things like that, than doing it on a more traditional way.
Excellent. Okay, unfortunately, I see our time is almost up here, but we want to end things with a fun speed round. So really quick, we're going to ask each of you 3 short questions. Keep your answers to 1 or 2 words maximum. Shouldn't be that difficult to answer. Lina, let's start with you. Your most successful marketing campaign to date?
My most successful marketing campaign
to date, yeah.
To date? Using influencers, I would say. There isn't a specific campaign, that's why.
Okay.
The campaign, I would repeat the one that we had some years ago. It's not the current one, but the only risk is wanting to stay. I think that was a quite successful campaign.
By a long shot, our Paper Planes campaign.
Paper Planes, okay.
And then your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram too.
WeChat.
Easy. Okay, and last but not least, what's the best food in your destination that you wish people would try, and why?
Oh, there's plenty. I mean, that's a tough question. I would say mansaf.
Okay.
I would say the whole range of fruit juices. We have so many fruits that I myself go to one destination and I find some new juices that are extremely delicious.
Los Angeles is the home of food trucks. And I invite people to try the Korean food truck where they sell kimchi collard green soup. You got to try this. This is unbelievable.
I thought you were going to say Whole Foods again there. But that's all we've got time for. Would you like to thank our panelists today and give them a round of applause, please?